Hey, today is Tuesday, 22nd of September, 2020. That sounded awkward, right? We're gonna discuss today Savannas Law and why it's important that Congress has passed it. We're gonna talk about how Donald Trump has labeled 3 cities as anarchist, whatever that's supposed to mean. I'm going to talk about how the whistleblower complaint on hysterectomies may be something that we want to take seriously because it mirrors an event that happened in the 70s. Last but not least, I'm going to talk about a film called Gather that it actually talks about indigenous food sovereignty from 3 different perspectives. Please remember to hit the subscribe button for more. It helps you out to help me out, which helps us all out, I guess. Anyway, and stay tuned. We got a lot to talk about. So it's 2020, and we think that we're not going to have any kind of bipartisan connection in order to get things done, and here we are. Something that's very important to me and other indigenous people. I wear the mask on Facebook or Twitter or my Instagram that has the handprint on it. On the Oh Just Talk podcast I was on Sunday with Vonda and Lydia, I wore my t-shirt that had the missing and murdered indigenous woman, and I spoke briefly on that. This bill that just passed is a very important step in the right direction. I'm using the Ground News app for this. I like the bias ratings that they give. USA Today happens to be a centerline bias rating, and this article is written by Jessica Flores. So, Savannas Act is named for Savannah LaFontaine Graywind of Fargo, North Dakota, a pregnant 22-year-old Spirit Lake tribal member who was killed in 2017. The bill unanimously passed the Senate in March after Senator Lisa Murkowski of Alaska, who's a Republican, reintroduced the bill that Heidi Heitkamp, senator from North Dakota, who's a Democrat, had proposed in 2017. What's really important is that this allows the interconnection of tribal government, state government, and federal government to work together on training people in how to properly respond to cases of missing and murdered indigenous women. A lot of times these things go underreported. There's a part in the article that actually states that. So let me get to it. Murder is the third leading cause of death for American Indian and Alaskan Native women, according to the Urban Indian Health Institute. That's the third leading cause. Do you understand how nuts that is? Kind of take that number and put it to whatever your culture happens to be. Say that is the third leading cause of death for the entirety of your race. And that's the kind of perspective that I actually have for this. It's not cancer or coronavirus or automobile accidents. It's actually another individual murdering a human being as the third leading cause of death. That is nuts. What's also nuts is where it says here, in 2016, there were 5,712 cases reported of missing and murdered indigenous women. That's not the part that is scandalizing to me, but that is something else that we have to pause and think about for a moment. The proportion of indigenous people in our own country, is such a small number that 5,712, it's really hard to explain. That is more than some entire tribes. Do you understand what I'm saying? 5,712 people is more than some entire tribes in the United States. That could be a genocide for an entire tribe. But it's not just that. Out of the 5,712 cases reported, only 116 cases were logged in the Department of Justice database. Only 116 cases. Imagine how that feels. I think some of you can imagine that, actually. So in any case, Brooke Cruz of North Dakota in 2018 was sentenced to life in prison for the killing of Gray Wynn. So the Department of Justice stated that New York City, Seattle, Portland are anarchist jurisdictions, and the Trump administration threatens to cut funding to those areas. This news is a left 40%, center 22%, and right 38%. We're going to go with The Hill because they have a nice little video that we can watch.
The Justice Department announced Monday that New York City, Seattle, and Portland would be designated as jurisdictions, quote, permitting violence and destruction of property under President Trump's early September order requiring federal agencies to submit potential funding cuts for cities, quote, permitting anarchy. In a statement, the agency hit leaders of the three cities for rejecting federal law enforcement assistance and quelling protests while pointing to ongoing demonstrations that have continued for weeks over the treatment of Black Americans by law enforcement. Attorney General William Barr said, quote, when state and local leaders impede their own law enforcement officers and agencies from doing their jobs, it endangers innocent citizens who deserve to be protected, including those who are trying to peacefully assemble and protest. Barr said, quote, we cannot allow federal tax dollars to be wasted when the safety of the citizenry hangs in the balance. It is my hope that the cities identified by the Department of Justice today will reverse course and become serious about performing the basic function of government and start protecting their own citizens.
So what I'm understanding from this video that we watched is that they're going to try to take away the federal funding that's paid for by these people's own tax money away from these cities because they're declaring them as anarchist jurisdictions. First of all, I don't understand how they have any ability to affect people's money when it's Congress that holds the power of purse and determines where our money goes. I'm not really sure what kind of legal ground work that they're going to do in order to make this pass, or if we're just going to, turn a blind eye and let the guy do whatever he wants to do like we've been doing for the past 3.5 years. The other end of this happens to be states' rights. So they talk about how these cities are just letting people do whatever they want. First of all, the majority of these people are just using their First Amendment rights to protest, a peaceful protest. Okay? Studies stated that 93% of the protests this past summer have been peaceful. So that's 7% of them that have not been peaceful. That doesn't make up a really large number. Another important point is that the police in these jurisdictions are arresting these individuals. They are. Because if they weren't, then we wouldn't be able to see on social media all the pictures of the ugly Portland protesters. Okay, I know that you've seen them because I've seen them. So to pretend like these local governments are not taking things into their own hands it's propaganda, because it's just simply not the truth. They don't like the time frame that they're doing them, but the problem is that we're not seeing all the negotiations that are going on amongst these groups. Okay? Not only that, but the idea that you're going to bring your jackbooted people in and crush protests does not work. First of all, that's not what a democracy is about. And second of all, what that's going to do is that's going to galvanize people even worse, and things will get worse. We have to watch how we handle these situations. You cannot suppress the people. That's not okay. And once we do, we've taken a step into authoritarianism. And see, that kind of thing is done by degrees. A little bit over time, until you turn around and there's a big golden statue of the dotard shining there, with the pens and hamburgers in his hand. Okay? We need to watch how we're handling these issues. Look at Waco. Look at Bundy, the Bundy Ranch. Okay? Things get out of hand when the federal government brings in their law enforcement and takes care of stuff. We've seen it time and again, and if this wasn't a Republican president, and this wasn't a Republican Congress, and if these weren't Democratic cities, we would be seeing the Republicans flipping their shit on it, okay? Because they did with Waco, they did with the Bundy Ranch. Anytime the government tries to step in and overtake states' rights, we usually have the Republicans and the Libertarians acting as the canaries in the coal mine, bringing attention to it. You know what I mean? Trying to tell us that it's going to stop. Where are you now? Where are you now? You should be joining in on this decrying of federal overreach, federal law enforcement overreach. Yeah, these riots need to stop, and the property damage needs to stop. But bringing in federal troops is not the way to do it. You can't take and put the toothpaste back in the tube once you've squeezed it out. Okay? We cannot step towards authoritarianism. Next article comes from Native News Online. It's an opinion piece by Levi Rickert. It was written on September 20th. I'm not going to really go through the article that much because I'm going to drop it down below in case you're interested in reading it. It's very interesting. I don't want to spoil it too much for you, but the title is really important by itself. Allegations of unwanted hysterectomies at ICE facility reminiscent of Fed's mass sterilization of Native women in 1970s. So the whistleblower complaint states that there are individuals that have been coming up and asking why they've been forced to have these hysterectomies. And Dawn Wooten, the nurse that actually was the whistleblower for this particular incident, states that she had no clue what to tell them. Okay? So what Levi Rickert does in this particular opinion piece is he takes the history of indigenous women in the 1970s being forced to be sterilized and shows how the government is totally capable of doing this. I really feel like I have a tinfoil hat on right now. But this is really going on. Well, I don't know if the allegations are really going on, but I do know that the sterilization of indigenous women went on, and there's proof in the article. So it's a pretty good read, and I recommend that you look at it. If you want to discuss it, please leave some comments down below. We could deep dive into this. It's something that's very interesting, and maybe we'll talk about it on a podcast, okay? Something that's very important to me to do is to discuss a piece of art that comes from a modern day indigenous artist. I talk about film, I talk about music, and I talk about literature usually. And it's important for me to show the modern indigenous life that's separate from the views that people have that come from mascots or movies. Okay, so in a lot of people's heads, we're anachronistic cigar store Indians, or Chief Big whatever, okay? And that's not how we think of ourselves. We think of ourselves as everyday people with the same dreams of being creative, with the same dreams of success, but also keeping in mind our relationship with the land and its food and its people, okay? So this article comes from Native News Online, and it's written by Monica White Pigeon. It was published September 21st. Okay. It's a 74-minute documentary that focuses on the diverse aspects and common obstacles tribal nations have had to overcome to reclaim their food sovereignty rights. Throughout the feature, the audience is introduced to three protagonists from a variety of indigenous backgrounds, including chef and nutritional recovery clinic owner Nephi Craig, who's White Mountain Apache, environmental activists, ancestral guard from the Yukon Nation, and aspiring scientist Elsie DeBray. This is a really good article, and basically what it's discussing is how the relationship with indigenous food has not just rested here in our country, but our indigenous foods have filtered its way throughout the United States, throughout other countries, etc. It talks about how we are educating people on indigenous foods that they may not have thought about, that introduce new flavors and concepts that maybe today in 2020 speak to some people. Okay, here's an important paragraph that kind of gives an idea. So, film director Sanjay Rawal examines the intrusiveness of colonialism and trauma associated with it while still offering hope by featuring natives who are combating food deserts and long-term genocide. In the documentary, Chef Craig spoke to an audience of young farmers to educate and discuss indigenous food systems. 70% of all foods consumed around the world today originated by indigenous people of the Americas, and that's some of the information that we want to instill in our own people. So I haven't had the opportunity to watch this movie yet, but it is on my list. Apparently, it has pretty high marks. It says like a 4 out of 5 from Common Sense Media. I am looking forward to it. If it's something that you're also interested in, maybe we can watch it not together because that's kind of illegal unless they give us permission to. But maybe we could watch it and discuss it in the comments down below. Hey, what's up? Yeah, that movie looks like it's gonna be good. Made me hungry. Yeah. What about you? No, never mind. It's just my shadow. Sometimes I have to have somebody to talk to, and who else do I have? In any case, if you enjoyed what we did today, please remember to subscribe. I appreciate it. It allows me to see what you guys are interested in, see maybe what I'm going to tweak. If you have any comments, please leave them below. Let's be respectful about things. I'm a new streamer here. If there are any topics that interest you that you want us to cover in future episodes, please let me know. In any case, Lepichkanawe, I'll see you again. I appreciate you stopping in. Have a good Tuesday.